You have some incredible home video that you recorded of Philmont Scout Ranch in Cimarron, New Mexico. Before we talk about that ranch, I'm so curious about your life as a photographer and documenting the early phases of your life. Did you enjoy shooting video?
I did. You know, I had a Super 8 video machine and I'd just go around and take pictures, and I didn't know what I was doing, of course, but you know, I could make little movies and I really enjoyed it.
Would you tell me the significance of your time there?
Well, you know, Philmont Scout Ranch, Wade Phillips of the Phillips 66 Oil Group gave the ranch to the Boy Scouts. It's 127,000+ acres up at Cimarron, New Mexico. And every year, 10 to 20,000 Boy Scouts come through that program. And I went as a 13 and a 14-year-old as a camper, and I just loved being out there and loved the mountains in New Mexico. And so then when I was 16 years old, I applied to work in their horsemanship program, and I was accepted to that. So my mother and daddy, we only had an 8-month high school. So in April, I got on a Trailways bus and headed west and got to Amarillo. We had to change buses to a Greyhound, and finally I ended up in Raton, New Mexico. I didn't know a soul, but there I was, ready to go to work.
I saw a great photo of you shoeing horses. Was that a common task?
Well, you know, they had 250 horses because every Boy Scout that came to Philmont had the opportunity to ride a horse at least once during that summer. And so when you've got that many people riding, and we had a crew of about 14 of us that took care of all the horses, and so we had to shoe them before the season started and then keep them shod all summer, and most of us had never done that before we started, so it was a learning experience.
I feel for your back.
Well, you know, at that point in time, we were young and fearless. There were no holes in our cape, and we were ready to go to work. We started work at 4:30 every morning, you know, gathered the horses, fed them, put the saddles on them, ready for a group to go ride, and we just had a great time. Well, you know, you don't, or at least I don't, you know, really get back to stop and just think about all you did and how it's affected things. You know, like at Philmont, that's when I became a man, you know. And when I first moved here to teach school, moved out to New Mexico State, there was a history professor named Ray Sadler. I don't know whether Ray's still alive or not, but he and I actually went to Mississippi State at the same time. But when we were at Philmont, we would get up at 4:30 in the morning and working like dogs to have all these horses ready, you know, and they wouldn't let us get to the front of the line to eat. And so we were pretty upset about that, and we were pretty bullish, I'm sure. But so he wouldn't do it, so we just took and dumped him in the horse trough. And pretty soon then he let us start to eat first, you know. But we deserved to, because we had to have 80 head of horses saddled by 8 o'clock, fed and saddled. And when I first moved out here, Frank Papin was having a Christmas dinner, you know, for the bank. And I saw Ray Sadler over, and I went over and spoke to him, and Ray, he's all excited. He says, "This is the guy I told you all about that threw me in the horse trough." So things just have a way of coming and going.
Was this the first time you were introduced to packing and horse pack trips?
Well, the second year I was there, I did what they call a cavalcade, where you take 26 boys and their leaders, and you'd go from place to place and pack all of their gear. And so that's how I learned to do that. And really what was important about that was we had a day off during the middle of the week at a camp called Beauvais, which was way up in the mountains. And at that time at Philmont, you couldn't drive everywhere. There were a lot of small camps that the scouts and everyone used that you had to go horseback into. So all of the groceries had to be packed into those. And they had a packer there named Leo Martinez, who had lived and grown up in that country. And Leo had a string of 7 mules, and we'd pack those mules. So on my day off, that was the first thing I wanted to do, was go pack mules with Leo. And so we'd get up early and go pack, you know, 7 mule loads of food to some camp, and then we'd come back And Leo had been born in that area, and so he knew it, and he'd worked on the CS Ranch and some of those famous outfits up there, and he knew where a little group of wild horses were. So we'd get up early and work hard, and then we'd tie our mules on the trail, and we'd skip over to the CS and see if we could catch a horse. And we did catch a yearling one time, but we had a lot of fun and some near accidents, but it all worked out well, and I guess we're smarter for it.
And you continued to lead pack trips. I saw a great photo of you jumping a substantial log, and likely in a Western saddle.
Yes.
You're a little wild, Dr. Armstrong.
I never have been accused of being careful. When I moved to New Mexico State, you know, I asked if we could do a packing trip during the interim period between spring and summer school, and my people agreed to let me do it. And so we set up a pack trip for 12 students. We'd take them into the Gila or into the one of the wildernesses for a week and teach them how to pack, how to take care of the horses, and how to cook and do all those things.
What do you love about that environment when you're out in the country on horseback and everything you have to eat you brought with you?
Yeah, we had to take a lot of food, no question. But the big thing is you get to be out in nature. You know, there are no automobiles. A wilderness area is an area that you can only go into on foot or on horseback, and you can take no motorized equipment with you at all. And so we would go up there and, you know, just be alone for that long period of time, and we didn't have to start the fire and cook our meals and all of this. One of the big things that I really enjoyed about the pack trip was, you know, being off in the wilderness, nobody else around. We'd very seldom see another person during the week that we were there. But there was a doctor named DeSimone from Kentucky that had seen an article about the pack trip, and so he kept calling, tell us he wanted to go, and we were full up. So he would call Rusty, my wife, and he'd tell her, said, now I know people, and says, if you'll talk to him just right, he'll let me go. And so finally I called him up and said, that's fine, you come on. And he said, well, says, I've got this fellow that usually goes with me on my adventures. And I said, bring him on. Well, this man happened to be a soil conservationist, retired, named Wallace Thompson. And Wallace rode Tennessee walking horses, and he was a great fiddler. So he brought one of his old fiddles the two times that he came, and we took off. Well, there's nothing to compare with being out in the middle of the Gila wilderness where there's no one else around, just you and the animals in your little group and a bonfire, and then Wallace would stand up and he would start playing that fiddle. Now, Wallace was not just a fiddler. He had been asked by Martha Lane Collins when she was elected governess of Kentucky to come and play My Old Kentucky Home at her inauguration. And he'd also been on the Grand Ole Opry many times. So that was just so exciting to listen to Wallace play that fiddle in the middle of the wilderness at night. And Wallace, I'd say, he had his two gray Tennessee walking horses. And before you get to the West Fork of the Gila River, you have to go through Ben Lilly Park, which is way up high, and then you fall off of a cliff where you drop 1,000 feet and 16 switchbacks. And Wallace finally admitted that both times he led his horses down the switchback. And then years later, he sent us a videotape that he had made of his farming and all. He used horses and whatnot and played some tunes for us. And when I called and thanked him for it, he said, this last tune is called the Gila Switchbacks. And so I said, Wallace, what were you thinking when you played the Gila Switchbacks? He said, sheer terror. So that's a great memory.
Any idea how many lives you have touched over the course of 60 plus years sharing horses?
I have no idea, but I've been blessed to go a lot of places.